You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So back in September, we had that the current administration indicated, all right, any companies over 100 employees, you guys are all going to need to be vaccinated. Now, we're going to allow for some testing. We're going to allow for some exemptions. But for the most part, over 100 employees, got to be vaxxed. What we're going to talk about today is it's basically the second stay from a judge from a court system saying, yeah, that whole vaccine mandate, not so much. That's what we're going to talk about. Federal Appeals Court calls Biden vaccine mandate fatally flawed and staggeringly overbroad. This is coming from CNBC. This is not some questionable outfit here. I mean, this is mainstream media, so they've got to be right. All right. Before we jump on in, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies here in Seattle, Washington, and I read the news from that perspective. Let's jump on in. I always think it's funny when you read from a news source where everybody's like, they've got their own agenda. Maybe they do, but we're going to read about what they got to say today, because there's only so many ways you can spin this little narrative here right now. A federal appeals court has called President Joe Biden's vaccine and testing requirements for private businesses fatally flawed and staggeringly overbroad. Staggeringly overbroad. That's an interesting term, isn't it? When you think of that, you're like, you're just staggering under the weight of this entire mandate. And then overbroad, meaning it just covered a whole bunch of extra stuff that it shouldn't have covered, arguing that the requirements likely exceed the authority of the federal government and raise serious constitutional concerns. Hey now, serious constitutional concerns. This is 2021. Anything goes, right? So will this vaccine mandate get through? Serious constitutional concerns. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit is an opinion issued Friday. This is late Friday. I'm reading for this to you on a Monday. Reading this to you on Monday, November the 15th. And on late last Friday, this opinion came out. So the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit is an opinion issued Friday evening, reaffirmed its decision to press pause. We just tapped the brakes a little bit. We just hit the pause button on the implementation of the requirements in another sign that they may not survive judicial scrutiny. The deal here is that on November 4th, I believe, we had we were given all of the information regarding this proposed mandate with the emergency temporary deal from OSHA. And then by November 6th, we had a ruling, and that it was, we're just going to hold pause on that. What happened last Friday, November whatever that was, is that the 13th? Is it the 13th on Friday? Friday the 13th? 14th, 15th? No, 12th. Yep, 12th. November the 12th, we got the second stay, essentially, saying, we're still going to hold tight here. Well, this isn't going anywhere. And basically what they're saying is until there's something else from the court system, maybe the Supreme Court, it's going to have to work its way up there. We're not doing anything more. This stay holds. This mandate is not going anywhere for now. The appellate court, considered one of the most conservative in the country, considered one of the most conservative in the country, originally halted the requirements on November 6th, pending review in response to challenges by the Republican attorneys generals of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Utah, as well as several private companies. So we've had this thing going on in the background, and we've been talking about this pretty consistently, because this is one of those major swaths of the American population that hits employment. Huge driving factor with purchasing real estate, putting food on your table, just basic things like that, right? So while the court has not yet ruled on the constitutionality of the requirements, the three-judge panel made clear that the lawsuits seeking to overturn the mandates are likely to succeed on the merits. talking about overturning these mandates. They're likely to succeed on the merits. They criticize the requirements, the mandate requirements, as a one-size-fits-all sledgehammer that makes hardly any attempt to account for differences in workplaces and workers. The example that I read, and I can't remember if it's in this article or not, was how about the trucker who drives, he's a commercial driver. He works long shifts. He's just in his truck by himself all day, 18 hours a day, whatever it is. He's just trying to get those goods out there because, we got this whole supply chain thing. And those truck drivers, they work hard. Tough job. He's out there driving his truck. Now, how about him compared to the guy in the meat processing plant where he's working shoulder to shoulder with a whole bunch of other people handling raw meat? There's got to be some differences there. And that's why I think the court basically indicated it's a one-size-all hit sledgehammer that makes hardly any attempt to account for differences in workplaces and workers. The administration didn't have time to break down all the differences, did they? So they're just like, all right, here's what we're going to do. It's going to apply to anybody at a company over 100 workers. It's what we're doing. Now get it out there. So, and that's what we're dealing with. And the court's like, wait a minute. You got to do this, this, and this. And from a constitution standpoint, this isn't right. And it's one size fits all and, a bunch of stuff. And we're probably not going to rubber stamp this baby. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, which policies workplace safety for the Labor Department, developed the requirements under emergency authority established by Congress. That authority allows the agency to shortcut the process to issue workplace safety and health standards, which normally takes years. Now, from my understanding, one of the things was a retweet from, who was it? Somebody in the White House spokesperson, White House press, I can't remember. Somebody in the White House retweeted something basically stating that this OSHA emergency temporary standard is a workaround. Yeah. Meaning this OSHA emergency temporary standard isn't really supposed to be covering this, but it's a workaround because, during the coronavirus, hey man, can't you let that go? Can't you just, get the vaccine anyway? And that's literally what we're working with, right? Okay. We know that got shut down in the court system and it's not looking good, but you should still get vaccinated anyway. That's kind of what we're being told. OSHA can now use its emergency authority if the labor secretary determines that a new safety or health standard is necessary to protect workers from a grave danger posed by a new hazard. Now, we've been working with the coronavirus now for almost coming up on 2 years this holiday season, right? So is there a new grave danger? These are some of the standards that they're going to have to overcome and basically get through the court system. And people in, the legal realm have kind of said, I don't really think that's going to go anywhere. Identical to when the CDC tried to implement the eviction moratorium. And the court system said, that the whole constitutionality of that, not so much. And that got shut down. And here we are. The judges on Friday questioned whether COVID poses a grave danger to all the workers covered by the requirements and argued that OSHA already has tools it can use short of a sweeping emergency safety standard. Okay. We've got stuff going on here, right? The Biden administration had asked the court on Monday to lift the pause, warning that delaying implementation would likely cost dozens or even hundreds of lives per day as the virus spreads. White House officials have repeatedly said that COVID clearly poses a grave danger to workers, but not just workers. That's the thing. Theoretically, it poses a grave danger to everyone. But here we've got OSHA imposing this just on workers at companies with over 100 employees. Now, if you're 99 employees, exempt. You don't have to follow this mandate, right? Or so it would seem. We don't really know because this hasn't been implemented yet. And so if you're at a company, don't worry, this hasn't gone through. But odds are most companies have already kind of taken the knee and made you get vaxxed up, and they're just going down that road anyway. Unless you live in a state where they're not doing that. Here in Washington, that is exactly what's going on. So White House officials have repeatedly said that COVID clearly poses a grave danger to workers, pointing to the staggering death toll from the virus and the high levels of transmission in counties across the U.S. Across the U.S. All right, but is OSHA and its emergency temporary standard, is that applicable at this point in the pandemic? That's one of the major questions. And should it be used? And this appeals court, what was it, the Fifth Circuit? I think it was the Fifth Circuit. U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. They're basically saying, no, pretty much not. We're not doing that. All right. So we talked about the Biden administration. So more than 750,000 people have died in the U.S. from the virus since the pandemic began, and more than 46 million have been infected. According to data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, more than 1,000 Americans die each day from the virus, and nearly 80,000 are infected daily on average, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. The White House has told businesses to press ahead with implementing the requirements, even as the legal drama plays out in the courts. Just basically said, don't worry about what the courts are saying. Go ahead and do it. Just do it. Just do it. That's literally what's going on. Companies with 100 or more employees have until January 4th to ensure their staff has received the shots required for full vaccination. That's if the mandates go through, which it is looking less and less likely that that's going to be a probability. After that date, unvaccinated employees must submit negative COVID tests weekly to enter the workplace. And they may have to pay for that. Now, you've got some workarounds with some, religious exemption and a medical exemption. But if you don't have that, maybe you're doing the weekly testing. Unvaccinated employees must start wearing masks indoors at the workplace starting December 5th. If this goes through, the likelihood of this going through does not look high at this point in time. The Biden administration faces a flurry of lawsuits seeking to overturn the mandates. Republican attorneys generals in at least 26 states have challenged the requirements in 5 federal appellate courts. The cases will be consolidated in a single court case through random selection among the jurisdictions where lawsuits have been filed. The Justice Department said earlier this week that it expects the random selection to take place on Tuesday at the earliest. So tomorrow we should have, you've got all these lawsuits going on. All right, we're going to hone it down to one because we just need to try one. And then it randomly goes to whichever court system jurisdiction where they're going to try it. So David Vladek, a professor of law at Georgetown University, told CNBC that there is a high probability the case will ultimately end up in the Supreme Court where there's a conservative majority. I honestly think, and I've thought this since the beginning, the only reason this would go through is because we're just on this runaway freight train of believing, all right, everybody's got to get vaccinated up, versus actually looking at the numbers and going, all right, well, this industry seems to be doing pretty okay on its own. This industry over here, you've got to have some different things. Literally, this is a one-size-fits-all type application. And that shouldn't be happening, but we're in such a big rush to get everybody vaccinated right now that this is just where we're at. And so it's going to take, people kind of going, all right, hold on, let's slow down. Let's look and see exactly what we have. But in the meantime, all of these companies are freaking out. Oh, we got to get the leg up and we want to be able to continue working forward. we're just going to make everybody get vaccinated, and they're doing their own thing. They're requiring their own employees. I think, unless you're in states where that's not what you're doing, but here on the West Coast, that is definitely what we're doing. Yeah, you might as well get vaccinated up because we're going to require it anyway. So there are justices on the court who want to rein in the administrative state, and this is a case in which those concerns are likely to come to the fore, Vladeck told CNBC on Monday. So that's kind of where we sit. We sit with 2 stays on the vaccine mandate if you're an employer over 100 employees. This is the private sector. This is not. We're not talking about government workers here. We are talking about private sector being dictated. And I think this is, it's not going to go anywhere. But by the time that this stuff gets litigated out in court, I think the whole coronavirus thing, the whole pandemic thing is going to look wildly different. I really do. Let's take a look at another article here. Judge doubles down on decision to block vaccine mandate on bigger businesses. Okay, in New Orleans, so late Friday last week, a panel of judges with the Fifth Circuit doubled down on their decision to pause a vaccine mandate on bigger businesses. The panel initially ruled the mandate cannot be enforced after business owners across the South filed lawsuits. Those businesses argue the Biden administration and OSHA overstepped by implementing the mandate, which requires businesses with more than 100 employees to require vaccinations against COVID-19 and enforce weekly tests for the virus among unvaccinated employees. In response to the lawsuit, the Biden administration defended its mandate by writing any decision to overturn the mandate completely would likely, all right, not actually, but more than likely, it's going to cost dozens or even hundreds of lives per day. How many people died in Chicago over the weekend? Yeah, the answer is 4. 20-something were shot. If you want to look at actual people dying, there's other stuff going on as well that we're not doing an OSHA emergency temporary standard for, right? I mean, that's kind of where we're at. Panel of judges chose to reaffirm their decision Friday despite that defense. Health agencies do not make housing policy, and occupational safety administrations do not make health policy, the latest ruling states. Wow. Let me just cover that one again. Health agencies do not make housing policy. All right? Yep. I'm going to go with that. That's logical. And occupational safety administrations, OSHA, who issued this emergency temporary standard, do not make health policy. Wow. It's coming from a judge. All right. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to say 2 thumbs up to that one. The latest ruling states. In seeking to do so here, OSHA runs afoul of the statute from which it draws its power and likely violates the constitutional structure that safeguards our collective liberty. These judges are just a no-go on this, aren't they? They're like, not so much, guys. Not so much. We're gonna put a hard stay on that, and until something further comes up in the courts, we're a no-go on this vaccine mandate moving forward. Judges on the panel specifically took issue with the broadness of the mandate. It's one size fits all, right? Which they say fails to acknowledge the diverse workplaces that would be impacted. There's all kinds of businesses out there that have over 100 employees. All kinds of businesses. My Summit Properties Northwest, we have over 100 people, but they are independent contractors, so they're not technically employees. Are those going to be, considered? They work for, well, they don't really work for me. They're independent contractors, and that's just how real estate works. But I mean, if you were to really sit down and look at that, okay, you've got an organization, people are making money, they're independent contractors, not really employees. But if that were to come down, I would have a difficult time with that because all these folks basically work independently. They work remotely. They're on the road. They're out there doing real estate. We're not all sitting together, 110 or whatever there are of us, in one room, just breathing on each other. So there's all these different considerations to think about. But with the time frame we've got here, we're just being told, you got to do it now. Otherwise, dozens, maybe even hundreds will be impacted. Okay. But is that enough to justify a mandate from OSHA through an emergency temporary standard? It's kind of feeling like that is not the case, right? It's feeling like that's not. Rather than a delicately handled scalpel, this is a quote, rather than a delicately handled scalpel, the mandate is a one-size-fits-all sledgehammer that makes hardly any attempt to account for differences in workplaces that have more than a little bearing on workers' varying degree of susceptibility to the supposedly grave danger the mandate purports to address. That's what the ruling states. And we read some of that before, but this just kind of comes right out and says, all right, here's the issue. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, we're issuing yet another stay. The latest ruling does not fully toss out the mandate. It simply pauses any enforcement until court challenges have been heard or the judge chooses to allow it to move forward. So it's just a stay until we get some other kind of legal ruling. And I don't think this one's going to go anywhere. I really don't. But I've thought that on a lot of this other stuff, like, when the governor here in the state of Washington started handing out these mandates, I was like, there's no way. Oh, wait a minute. This is the state of Washington. So, okay. Yep. This does make total sense. But collectively, for the entire United States, you got a lot of states. We talked last week, maybe it was the week before, about the number of Republican governors out there who were like, no, we're going to fight this tooth and nail. And that's kind of where we're at. So as we continue to kind of move forward here, I will keep you deeply apprised of this issue, because this is one of those things to me that the workplace where people earn their living and feed their families has been kind of commingled with this whole vaccine mandate thing. People aren't allowed to make their own health decisions for themselves at this point in time. It's either you need to work or you need to be vaccinated. You can't have both if you choose not to get the vaccine. And I think those decisions should be made by individuals. I feel very strongly about that. If you want to go out and get the vaccine, it's kind of like, okay, that's your call. You go for it. You go, do your thing. That's your decision. But for it to be mandated based on something that is basically has been retweeted by the administration as being a workaround, that kind of tells you where we sit, right? It's a workaround. How's that workaround coming? Hey, man, come on now. Yeah, that's where we are. So it's bogged down in a couple of legal stays. Will it get resurrected? Will this come down as a real thing by January 4th? I don't think there's any way that that's going to happen. But I have been wildly wrong in some of this other stuff, and I've watched other stuff happen, and it's like, what? What are we doing here? Well, on this one, from everything I've read, I don't think this one has a chance, but crazier stuff has happened, right? Either which way, I will keep you updated right here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. So stay tuned, because judges are gonna talk. They're gonna say stuff, and we're gonna have to talk about it and figure it out. Because your job might be on the line. You might be one of these folks who are like, I'd like to make my own medical decisions, but I do work at this big company. Therefore, being drug into it. We're gonna keep following this storyline, and I will keep you apprised. So, thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for supporting the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. I will catch up with you next time. Until then, stay safe. We'll talk soon. Bye for now. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.